is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, Slim Cliffy. I had a little crazy weekend myself. Everyone in my house had the flu. Had to take the little guy to the ER, but he's good. We're on the mend. I didn't get it. I have an elite immune system. I'm just kidding. I'll probably get it. But what's going on, Cliffy? How you doing?
Not too bad. Healthy and happy, I guess. So I can't complain. Getting to that point of the season, I mean, we talked about it. You know, teams are starting to wind down a little bit, getting to that point of the season where you're getting a lot of lopsided matchups in the NHL, and you're certainly seeing that on the board here tonight. Minnesota in Anaheim, Los Angeles against Chicago, Edmonton against Montreal, Nashville and San Jose, Boston and I guess Ottawa even at this point. So a lot of lopsided matchups on the board here tonight, but it's also spreading out ownership. We'll talk about ownership through the show, but Top Stacks tool right now only has one line in double digits, and it's exactly 10%. So it's going to be one of those nights, we'll always talk ownership on the show, but it feels like one of those nights where you don't really have to worry about it. Like if you like a line, if you like a stack, if you like, your mix, if you're 20 maxing or 150 or whatever, just kind of go with it.
Yeah, there's a bunch in the 9 to 10% range, one at 10, everything else in the 9. So don't think there's going to be an overly chalky spot. Obviously, you'll have your chalky players like Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Austin Matthews, David Pastrnak. They'll see their ownership, but as the line, you're not going to see lines super high. 13 games is one of the bigger slates we've had in a while. This is one of the stupid NHL weeks. 2 games yesterday, 13 today, 2 tomorrow, 900 on Thursday. Just, classic Gary Bettman. So should probably break it down. Just wanted to say thank you guys for the support. As always, without you guys, we wouldn't be here. Through the affiliate signups, the super chats, the likes, the shares, whatever, you know what I mean? You guys rock. And except for Haas, who left us high and dry. I hear from him once in a while. He just, left. And now we have to deal with daily deposit Frostback. And I don't like him as much as Haas. I'm kidding. I do like his goalie picks. I do like his goalie picks because I like stacking against them. But in all honesty, the Discord is really fun. And you should get in there if you're not in there. And let's start breaking down this slate, and hopefully we can give you some good advice and you win some money. Ottawa Senators with a 2.5 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 3.5. Tough scenes in Ottawa land for the Senators this season. It's unfortunate. We kind of like playing the Senators in DFS. They've just been brutal. I don't particularly love this game. There's a lot of those. I'm not going to stamp this one. This game sucks because there's way worse on this slate. So I don't want to overuse the stamp. But I don't have a ton of interest in this game. Pastrnak always in play. You want to play that line. This is one of those lines that's close to 10%. Pastrnak, Zacha, Heinen at 17,600, 6.9% top 2 stack, 9.7% projected ownership. Don't particularly love that, especially when the highest owned line is 10%. I don't want to be playing Pavel Zacha as one of the highest owned of the night. You know what I mean? So David Pastrnak, elite one-off here tonight. I don't have any faith in Ottawa defensively, on the penalty kill, in net. For whatever reason, Jonas Korpisalo had an unbelievable season last year. Went to the Kings. He had a good season with Columbus. Went to the Kings. Had a good end of the season there. Goes to Ottawa. For whatever reason, that franchise cannot just their goalies suck. It's I don't know if it's the way they play.
Yes, it is.
Yes, there you go. But Korpisalo is having a miserable season. So Pastrnak one-off is fine. You want to play Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusk. They're fully correlated. I guess that's fine. They're coming with negative leverage. I don't particularly love that line. They don't play well together. 15-4. I'd rather look elsewhere. So I think Pastrnak one-off is fine. You want to play full Boston one. I think that's fine. But I think for me, it's Pastrnak and maybe, some blue liners, and we'll call it a day. On the Ottawa side, Tkachuk, Pinto, Batherson, 1.2%. It's fine, but 19K road line with a 2.5 total on a 13-game slate really is not that appetizing. If anything, I'll go to Stützle, a Giroux 2-man, but again, like, I'm not going to make my living stacking the Sens tonight. So if they get into their crunches, they get into your crunches. But I'm not prioritizing anything in 1 to 3 in this game outside of maybe a Pastrnak one-off.
Yeah, I'm not in on Ottawa. The top line would be the line that I would have interest in. Tkachuk, Pinto, Batherson. Like, they've actually been fine offensively. I mean, not as good with Tarasenko up there instead of Batherson, but obviously Tarasenko's gone now. There are just other lines in that 18 to 20K-ish range that I would rather play than Ottawa that are also coming in with pretty low ownership. So that's just kind of the way I look at it. On the Boston side, like, I wrote up David Pastrnak in the picks article. Free to read up at Stokastic.com. Just head on over to the NHL section. I mentioned that he only has one power play goal in his last 20 games, but he's still shooting a lot, obviously. He's over 4 shots per game in those last 20 games. And playing with Pavel Zacha has been he's been the guy that Pastrnak has played like best offensively with, or at least produced the best offensively with. Like 3.1 points per 60 at 5-on-5 with Zacha as a center. Like, that's getting up close to like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid territory. And you don't think of, like, Pasternak's obviously a great producer, but a lot of it is goals, not necessarily assists, but he's actually throwing up some decent assists too. All that to say is, like, I don't mind Boston one here. Here's the thing is, listen, I get that Ottawa is not a very good team. Like, I'm fully on board with that. Travis Hamonic hasn't played in a few weeks. And I've been looking at some of, like, I guess you call them like under the hood numbers or whatever, like zone exits and defense entries and stuff like that. And Hamonic is just like, he's god awful. Like, honestly, one of the worst defensemen in the league. And I'm sorry. And if you look at, I was looking at since in calendar 2024, since the All-Star, or not since the All-Star break, since January 1st, since New Year's Eve, with Hamonic on the ice, 3.5 expected goals against per 60, 4.7 goals against per 60. No other defenseman is worse than 3.0 expected goals against, and no other defenseman is worse than 3.6, not 4.6 goals against per 60. So it's one of those things where I always think about something smart I saw on hockey Twitter once, which, hockey Twitter does produce the odd nugget every once in a while, is that your defense core, it's more about the weakest link rather than the strongest player. And if you have a bad bottom pair that constantly gets caved in, it's going to make the team look bad. It'll certainly make the goalies look bad. And if you can replace that weak link, it really helps make everything look better. And you just have to look at the goals against numbers to know that Ottawa has been a lot better since Hamonic's hit the bench. It's only been, I think, 9 games since Hamonic got the heave-ho. 2.3 goals against per 60. It's better than Boston at 5-on-5. So, like, yes, I always have interest in David Pastrnak, but where his line is going to be one of the highest owned lines, and I genuinely believe that this Ottawa team is much, much better without Travis Hamonic ever touching the ice again. Like, I'm sorry, that's just kind of the truth. I'm definitely fine with the Pastrnak one off. It's why I wrote him up in the article. I just don't know about full stacking, especially where Boston's power play has not been super elite. I think this is a game where I'm picking one-offs from Boston, or I'm just moving along.
Yeah, definitely makes some sense there. Hamonic, he's bad. I don't know if you ever watched him play in the chat. Ooh, baby. He ain't no Artem Zub, that's for sure. He's actually been really good, by the way. Columbus Blue Jackets with a 2.9 total. Heading into Detroit, the Wings somehow, some way, some miracle have a 3.7 total. Why? I don't know. I will say Lucas Raymond has looked very, very good. Unfortunately, he's playing with JT Compher and David Perron, which is a mess. I get that they have a 3.7. It's just like Joe Veleno, top line center. No. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't really want to stack anything from Detroit. I think, DeBrincat Kane is fine. A Lucas Raymond one-off is fine. But in terms of full stacking, I just don't want to full stack. If you want to play Raymond Confer Perron to fit in Edmonton or Colorado or whatever, sure, go ahead. But they have a 1.2% top two stack, 7.1% projected ownership. I don't want to play that negatively leveraged JT Confer. On top of that, Perron's having a miserable season. I just don't want to play Detroit like that. If anything, I'll go to Veleno, Kane, DeBrincat, but I don't want to play Joe Veleno. So it'd be DeBrincat, Kane, but they're on different power play units for whatever reason, unless they changed them in practice yesterday.
I think they did because they had Moritz Cedar running the top power play.
That's right.
In practice today, and they did have DeBrincat, Kane, Raymond, Fabry.
That's actually a decent unit considering the coach. So I'm fine with a 2-mana DeBrincat Kane. I don't know, man. Without Larkin, it's hard to full stack anything. Honestly, I think my favorite line is going back to Jenner, Nylander, Gaudreau at 16.5, getting a little bit of positive leverage. 3.2% projected at 16.5. Blue Jackets have a 2.9 total. Detroit sucks defensively. They don't have a very good penalty kill. They're fully correlated. I mean, Columbus's power play sucks, but they did go away from 3 forward, 2 defensemen. It might improve a little bit there. So if anything, from a full stacking perspective, I'm going to Columbus 1. You want to take some one-offs from Detroit? I think that's fine. I just don't want to full stack anything.
So I was looking at those Detroit units. Who's taking the face-offs? Robbie Fabry? Honestly, it's
Raymond in St. Louis.
It's Raymond, DeBrincat, Kane, and Fabry. And, Fabry's taken some face-offs this year, but it's 100 face-offs in 60 games or something like that. He doesn't take them very often. That kind of worries me. I'm not a big, all of your players have to be 57% on the face-offs, but it's important for the power play that you win that opening draw and not have to skate back into your zone and lose 20 or 30 seconds or whatever. So I don't know. I mean, they're just mashing buttons. They kind of have to. It's just been a tailspin since Dylan Larkin got hurt. So I'm with you on Detroit. A 3.7 total. I look at it as, listen, if I get buried by Joe Veleno tonight, it's something I'll be able to tell my grandchildren 30 years or 50 years from now or something like that. I don't have any interest in stacking Detroit. Both lines, DeBrincat and Veleno have played 120 minutes together. They've been buried. 56 shot attempts for, 70 against. Confer and Raymond are a little bit better, but then you throw in David Perron, who's having a really tough season next to them. And what I will say is that Perron's best numbers, at least by expected goals, have come with Confer as a center. So maybe there's something to Detroit too, but I'm not playing them at 6x their ownership, 6x their top two stack. I just think there are other spots to go. I'm with you on Columbus. And I was looking at the top lines. Bring up the top stacks. Columbus 1 is only $600 more expensive. They have a higher top two stack percentage and much lower ownership rate. And we've seen Columbus 1 succeed, whether it's with Jack Roslovic or now with William. Well, it kind of looks like William sometimes, or Alex Nylander. We've seen them succeed over the last month or so. There's no defensive matchups on the Detroit side that I'm concerned about whatsoever. Detroit's been taking more penalties too. 3.8 minor penalties taken per game since the All-Star break. It's not amongst the Anaheim, Florida tier, but they're right there kind of in with Arizona and Montreal. They've been taking their penalties. Columbus 1 perfectly correlated on the power play. They're back to running a 4-forward, 1 defenseman unit. Very small sample with Nylander there. I think it's between 45 and 50 minutes, but 80 shot attempts per 60. I was writing about Alex Nylander at a different website about his, kind of his journey to get to this point, and he kind of stands out in the tape that I watched. He does look good, and he looked good in his one full season with Chicago too. I'm with you. For me, this game is about Columbus 1. Yeah. I'm not prioritizing Columbus. Let's kind of get that straight. Like, they're not a line that I'm saying, top 3 line for me on the slate, factoring in, upside and price and ownership and all that. But I much prefer them over anything on the Detroit side. And I will have them at least in consideration for my stacks. Not saying that I'm going to play them, but I think this is a Columbus one game. I don't really have that much interest in anything on Detroit beyond what you said, some like a one-off Lucas Raymond or a one-off Patrick Kane, play, one of their defensemen or something. I think fine. Stacking, no.
Yeah, just like if Larkin was in this game, it'd be a completely different story. But like going from Larkin to Joe Veleno is like going from like Connor McDavid to me. So like I have no interest. Sorry, Joe Veleno.
I was going to say, relatively speaking, are you better than Joe Veleno?
Oh, yeah. If I can figure out how to get my skates on without assistance, yeah.
Okay.
I'm fast. I just don't know how to stop. I'm like that guy from Mighty Ducks. I just crash into the boards. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.1 total heading into New Jersey. The Devils have a 3.4 total. The lines and top stacks for the Devils might be wrong. They had an optional this morning, and you were saying that they were kind of hinting at putting Hughes with Haula and Holtz, which would mean that it's probably going to be Nico, Meyer, and Palat or Bratt.
Nico, Bratt, and Palat. Yeah.
Nico, Bratt, and Palat. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Because in top stacks, we have Hughes, Hischier, Bratt, Meyer, Haula, Mercer, and both those lines are coming in close to 10%, which is crazy. This could be an interesting one because it's at 7 p.m. Eastern, and I do happen to like the Devils here tonight, and maybe you can get a nice low-owned combo. Holtz in the top 6 definitely sparks Cliffy's attention. I just don't know if that would be the line I would go to.
And I don't know if he's going to last all 3 periods either. Like, let's get that straight.
Yeah, I mean, if it was Lindy Ruff, he would make it 3 shifts. With Travis Green, maybe he makes it 5. Like, I don't know. But if it is Hischier, Bratt, and Palat, that would be the line I'd have interest in. You probably get them at a fairly low-owned combo as my internet decides to do some fun stuff. So it's kind of a wait and see there. On the Pittsburgh side, like it is Jake Allen in net. He's okay. Like he might be better than any Devils goaltender this season, which isn't saying a lot, but like it's better than what they've had. People may gravitate towards Malkin, Raquel, Bunting. And like Raquel's having an awful season. If we're going to say that Perron's having an awful season, Raquel's having a miserable season. Malkin's not shooting. Bunting has looked good in Pittsburgh, but like I don't have a ton of interest in that line. It would be that Crosby, Rust, O'Connor line, but if it is Nico and Palat, they're actually good defensively. So like I don't have a ton of interest in Pittsburgh. It's probably the Devils' top line, and you're going to have to wait and see what the combo is, really. So Devils won for me.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of merit to keeping an eye on or to considering Pittsburgh here, mainly just because like Crosby and Rust have still been fine offensively without Gensel. They're up over 150 minutes without Gensel, 3.6 expected goals for, 73 shot attempts per 60 at 5-on-5. Drew O'Connor, 21 shots in his last 10 games. So he's not just, some fence post on that wing. Like there's merit to playing them, and they're not coming in with a ton of ownership. 1% ownership. Like I would rather play Pittsburgh 1 than Ottawa 1 here tonight. Is kind of what I'm getting at, but I'm not prioritizing them in any sense. Yeah, Evgeny Malkin, speaking of not shooting, oh my God, man. Last 27 games, which is about a third of the season, pretty much right on bang on a third of the season, 49 shots. Like he's at like 1.8 shots per game over the last third of a season. It's crazy. He's just not shooting. If it is Brad Palat and Hischier, that would be the line I would have interest in. I agree with you there. Like, this was a line that kind of kept the team afloat when, Siegenthaler was hurt, Hamilton was already out, Jack Hughes was hurt. Like, this was the line that kept them anywhere as close to a playoff spot. 4.3 expected goals per 60, 4.6 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5, and over 260 minutes together. So it's not a small sample. Brad hasn't scored in 9 straight games, but he's getting back his familiar line mates. For the offense that the top line for Pittsburgh can produce, still not that good defensively with or without Gensel. So I do think it's a good matchup for Hischier, Brad Palat, assuming that is the line. If it's not, and they do have Timo there, like, I'm still fine with playing Timo instead of Palat. But I just think that I agree that there's going to be a chance that 6:30 Eastern rolls around, warm-up start, we see Palat, Hischier, and Brad. And because those aren't the line combinations at a lot of the lineup sites, you could get what is going to be a somewhat chalky Devils team. You could get them at fairly low ownership as a trio. So I agree. If it's Palat, Hischier, Brad, I have a lot of interest in that line tonight.
Yeah. I mean, Pittsburgh keeps saying that their goal is to make the playoffs. My goal is to make the playoffs too. I'm not going to make it. So, they've just been not great. So, Winnipeg Jets with a 2.7 total heading into New York. The Rangers have a 2.8. I mean, this is a good actual hockey game. This game is pretty miserable for DFS. If anything, on the Rangers side, it would probably be Kreider's advantage at Ralsovik. They have a 65-minute sample now. They're pretty high event, unsurprisingly. And if they're going to see Scheifele, Connor, Iafallo, Iafallo's been up there for over 200 minutes this season somehow. They're not that great defensively. So if anything, it would be the Rangers top line. But you're running into Hellebuck. And on the Jets side, you're running into Igor. The second line for Winnipeg has been very good, but so has the Rangers' second line. You know what I mean? I don't know. If you happen to get a little bit, if you're playing 150, you get 1-2% of, the top 6 of each or whatever, fine. But in single entry, I find it very hard, very, very hard to prioritize anything in this game.
Yeah, it is. I think it's one of 2 games with a 5.5 total tonight, and the other game has the Chicago Blackhawks that has a flat 2.0 total. So it's kind of lopsided. If it was any sort of reasonable team facing Los Angeles, then we might see Rangers, Jets being the only 5.5. Now, yeah, high event for the Rangers top line, to say the least. I mean, if Roslovic's as advertised, right? He's helped them be better offensively. They're not that great defensively. That's just kind of what everybody expected, and that's what they are. Igor playing the way he is certainly helping the defense look a lot better than what they played. Roslovic has 3 points in his last 3 games. I think they're fine as a mid-price stack. I kind of agree with you. This is not a priority for me by any stretch. Rangers too is kind of it's kind of interesting in this sense because they're 20,200. We were talking about Ottawa a little bit earlier. I think I would probably rather play Rangers 2 than Ottawa 1 here tonight, just because we have seen Rangers 2 be so good this season. And, they have had some big games against good teams. I'm not prioritizing Rangers or Jets at all here tonight. I do think there's a little bit of merit to that Rangers second line. Winnipeg's interesting because I hate to break it to you, Josh, but the expected goals against numbers for the Rangers have been really, really bad for a while now. Igor saved them. Yes, most games they've looked better without Trouba in the lineup, but the defensive numbers have not been good. And I was looking earlier, just over the last couple weeks, most of which obviously would be without Trouba in the lineup. Hasn't been it's been fine, but not great for the Rangers. 2.4 expected goals against per 60 is basically the middle of the league. I don't know. Connor Scheifele and Iafallo have not been that bad offensively. You get 2 out of the 3 on the top power play unit. They're probably going to play heavy minutes. I think it's Winnipeg 1 and Rangers 2 in this game. Rangers 2 I'd prioritize first, but I don't have really I'm with you. I don't have any interest in stacking either side, like one-offs maybe, but that's about it.
Yeah, like, and I've seen the numbers on the Rangers, but like that's a classic Rangers team. Like they've been bailed out by goalies since 1994. But like Iafallo just up on that top line just kills me. If it was Velarde up there and he was healthy, it would be a different story, and maybe you can talk me into.
I mean, there's a bunch of different wingers. Like if it was Toffoli up there, or Ehlers, or Niederreiter, or Perfidi, like there's like 5 guys I'd rather see in that spot.
Iafallo is literally Dustin Brown 2.0 right now. It's just like, why is he up there? Like he doesn't help on either end of the ice. He's just a guy. So like I'm gonna get nuked in chat now when Iafallo scores tonight. But like,
oh, he's getting a hat trick now that you said that.
Yeah. Velarde up there, Toffoli up there, anybody up there, and I would definitely consider Winnipeg one more seriously. It's just Iafallo just doesn't do nothing for me. Toronto, speaking of teams that do nothing for me, Toronto Maple Leafs with a 3.0 total or 3.4 total, excuse me, heading into Philadelphia. The Flyers have a 3 total. Marner's still out. They're going with Matthews, Bertuzzi, Holmberg, Nylander, McMahon, Domi. I will say Bobby McMahon has looked pretty good, doing much better than Vince. They're not related. But Tavares, Nyes, and Robertson on the third line. Torts going healthy, scratching their captain. That takes some balls, as Torts would say. He hasn't been great recently, but he's also been playing with nobody. So I don't know. Maybe they're just giving him a little mental reset, but the lines supposedly are Tippett, Konechny, Frost, Farabee, Lawton, and Brink, Forrester, Paling, and Hathaway. I don't necessarily agree with what Tort's doing, but you have to respect his conviction on what he does with his teams. He will get the most out of you, or he will send you packing. That being said, I don't like this game. Shocker. Domi, McMahon, Nylander coming in at 6.2% projected ownership. Like, I get that Erson's playing his first game in like a week. He's played like one period in the past week. He has not been good. 6.2% McMahon, Domi, Nylander. Like, I guess they'll be fine offensively. I don't know, man. At 15-1, I think there's other options that I prefer. Matthews, Bertuzzi, Holmberg, like they're getting positive leverage barely, but like Holmberg is the definition of a defense, all defense, no offense forward. Like I like Matthews can only do so much. Like a Matthews one-off here is fine. I just don't have a ton of interest in the Flyers or in the Leafs here, despite them having a 3.4. These lines just leave a lot to be desired. My favorite line in this game is probably Tippett, Konechny, Frost, and they're coming in around 9%, which is on the higher end of ownership on lines here tonight. But like 17-3, they're cheaper than the Matthews line. They're probably going to avoid the Matthews matchup. They're going to see the middle six of the Leafs, which is just brutal defensively. So I don't mind a little bit of negative leverage for Frost, Konechny, Tippett. It's probably going to be that line in that game. Will I play them in single entry? I don't know, but they're probably going to be on my fairly long list that I have to cut down to 2. So it would be Philadelphia 1 for me. You want to one off Joel Farabee, I think that's fine. But like this game as a whole kind of just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
So I have no interest in the Matthews line. Like I'm not playing Matthews Holmberg. Like again, it's kind of like Joe Veleno. Like if Pontus Holmberg is the guy that buries me here tonight, then I'll be able to live with that.
Yeah.
Toronto 2. It's interesting because Nylander, obviously, he's just like a world-class offensive winger. Like he just is. Bobby McMahon has been able to pretty much maintain his shot rates, even though he's not scoring as much as he was a month ago. And Max Domi, like yeah, he's a black hole defensively, but he's still a really good playmaker who's good in transition. You know what I mean? So like I can see that line being good offensively, especially if they're not getting, that Forster Paling shutdown matchup or anything like that, right? And if I look in the like 14 to 16K range, like there's a line in Los Angeles that we'll talk about later that I'll play. That I'd rather play for sure. But other than that, like you're looking at like Detroit, like Tampa 2, Boston 2, Ottawa 2, Carolina 2, like Buffalo going into Vancouver, like Vancouver at home to Buffalo. You know what I mean? Like there's not a lot in that particular range that appeals to me. So in that sense, I don't hate Toronto 2, but it's another one of those lines like if I was 150 maxing, maybe I'd have some. I'm not going to be targeting them in my single entry. I did write up Philly 1 in the picks article today. Konechny and Tippett have been really, really good together this season. 41.7 shots, 3.1 expected goals, 5.3 actual goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. They're probably going to see a lot of that Domi line, and they have just been atrocious defensively. 3.5 expected goals against, 3.2 actual goals against per 60. Now, the last game, Tippett, Frost, and Konechny were all in the top power play. Whether that sticks, it's the Philadelphia Flyers. Who knows? But the Leafs have legit been a bottom 10 penalty kill in the league going back to January 1st. We're talking 2.5 months now. It's a bad penalty kill that the Flyers are up against. Maybe they can get lucky and pop one on the power play, and then they get one at 5-on-5. Tippett gets his shot bonus or something like that, and then you're on your way. I don't mind Philly 1 here tonight. I know they're coming in, 8, 9, 10% ownership per the top stacks tool. Honestly, I think that's fine. Like as long as it's not one of those like 5% top 2 stack and 22% owned like Nashville or whatever it is sometimes. I'm fine with that from Philly. So Philly 1 for me is what I like best in this game. I can understand playing Toronto 2. They're not my favorite target in that price range, but I don't think there's a lot in that specific price range that I'd rather play other than maybe one of the Kings lines. So I think there's some merit to Toronto too, especially where they're not going to get that shutdown matchup. And God knows Erson's been terrible for like 6 weeks now. So I think there's some merit there, but it's Philly 1 I like best in this game, and it's not even close.
Yeah, Toronto 2 is interesting. I agree with you with the Kings. I think I like Carolina 2 a bit better than Toronto 2, which we'll get to next, and I'll explain my reasoning, but ownership. And but yeah, before we get to the Carolina game, if you want to go premium for the rest of the season or this week, whatever you want to do, click the link in the chat to get access to the best NHL data and tools in the industry. You get player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord. You can do weekly, you can do monthly, you can add Fantasy Cruncher. You don't have to add Fantasy Cruncher. Thank you, Fantasy Cruncher. But yeah, Cliffy's going through the data that we show on the show, but it will give you access 24/7. And the most importantly, you get access to daily deposit Frostbacks goalies, and you just fade them, and you make money. He has a good sense of humor, so he can take it. But yeah, click that link in the chat. Come into the Discord, say what's up. Carolina Hurricanes with a 3.2 total heading into Long Island. That honestly sucks. The Islanders have a 2.7. Islanders going Bo Horvat, Brock Nelson, Kyle Palmieri, Barzal, Lee, JG Pajot, and then, the bottom 6 doesn't really matter. Carolina going Gensel, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Netchis, Kuznetsov, Stahl, Martinook, Fost. So I know the Islanders have been a much better defensive team since Wah has taken over, and that's true. Penalty kill still a bit suspect. I don't have a ton of faith in these new lines defensively. Like, JG Pajot's had a pretty bad defensive season. You throw Anders Lee, who's had trouble skating, and Barzal, who's a very good offensive player, into the mix. I don't particularly love them, and they'll probably see a fair bit of that Svechnikov, Netchis, Kuznetsov matchup. And Svechnikov and Netchis have had very, very good numbers together. You throw Kuznetsov into the mix, who's an excellent playmaker. I think that line could be very good. Do I want to prioritize them on this slate? No. And we talked about the lines in the 16,000 range. I don't know if I'm going to be living in that range, but I do kind of like that Carolina second line better than the Leafs second line. I think I prefer the Kings, which we'll get to at the end, but I don't mind taking a stab at Kuznetsov and Svechnikov at 1.4% projected ownership. Other than that, the top line's fine, right? Gensel, Aho, Jarvis, they're just expensive. You know what I mean? I think that's the issue. 20,400. Gensel still priced like he's playing next to Crosby. If you want to have them as contrarian stack, sure, go for it. They're fully correlated, and the Islanders' penalty kill hasn't been great.
Yeah,
on the Islanders side.
Oh no, sorry, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have an interest in the Islanders here tonight. It's just a brutal matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be just as brief with the Islanders. I don't have any interest in them either. Like, I get that Islanders top line is perfectly correlated. It's also the worst power play matchup in the league, right? Carolina has the best penalty kill in the league, and they have basically all season. I was looking at the numbers for Horvat and Barzal this year when they've been split. I don't think anybody would be surprised, but the offensive numbers are atrocious. Bo Horvat in 160 minutes without Barzal, 1.9 expected goals per 60 minutes. Matt Barzal, 220 minutes without Bo Horvat, 2.1 expected goals per 60 minutes. Like, I get why they're doing it. They've lost 4 in a row. They're in a playoff race. They have to try something. Not sure that this is going to work. So, especially given the matchup against Carolina, like, that's an easy pass for me. I agree with Carolina too. Svechnikov, Necas, Kuznetsov, like, they are one of those lines in that 14 to 16K range that I think are in play. I don't know if I'd rather play them than Toronto. Here's my issue is that I still think the Islanders are going to be fine defensively. You want as much of the top power play unit as you can get. And Gensel, Aho, and Jarvis is perfectly correlated on the top power play. Like, that's just kind of like my thing here. I don't really have interest in stacking either side. Like, Aho and Jarvis, they've been pretty good without Andrei Svechnikov, 4 goals per 60. Like, Gensel has 5 points in 4 games, but you're right about Gensel's price. Like, he's still priced as if he's playing 21 minutes a game next to Sidney Crosby. Like, yes, he does have 5 points in 4 games. With Carolina, he's played 15, 17, 15, and 20 minutes. Like, if he plays 15 to 17 minutes, there's no way he's worth 7,700 on DK or whatever it is. So I think the line I like best in this game is Carolina too. I'll agree with you on that. I don't think there's a lot of interest for me in this game for stacking wise in single entry anyway. One-off Necas, one-off Svechnikov, one-off Barzal. Like, those are the types of things that I'm fine with. I'm not fine with stacking either side. Not in single entry. Not for me anyway.
Oh, yeah, no, I have no interest in stacking the Islanders. If anything, I would stack Carolina too, but your point about the power play does make some sense. So, yeah, one-off Svechnikov, good. One-off guys from the top line, good. I still think, stacking Carolina too is okay in your MME portfolio. What's not okay is that we have to break down another Sharks game this season. San Jose Sharks with a 2.2 total heading into Nashville. The Preds have a 3.9 total. I hate breaking down Sharks games because you can legit put anyone into play for Nashville. The issue here is, right, Nashville 1 has positive leverage right now. So how do you not play them at 19.5, 9.8% projected ownership, fully correlated in the power play? The issue is they have 2 defensemen on the power play. There is data going back to like Stonehenge that shows that it doesn't work. Barry and Yossi with Nashville 1. I don't particularly love that. It could work here tonight. Obviously, it's the Sharks. So I do like Nashville 1. Nashville 2 is actually, or Nashville 3, Novak, Evangelista, Jankowski. That's actually pretty interesting at 10-6. They've actually been pretty good. You just have to get past clicking in Mark Jankowski. But they will fit in with anybody here tonight. They're a filler. They could fit with Colorado 1. They've been very, very good together. They're going to get depth of the Sharks, which is very, very bad. I don't mind Novak, Evangelista, Jankowski. Even Sissons, Zucker, Bavillier is okay as well. Am I going to play Cole Smith here tonight? Probably not. Like, you know what I mean? So, like, 3 national lines in play for me. On the Sharks side, I don't particularly want to stack a team with a 2.2 total, especially with the top line getting 6x ownership on their top 2 stacks. I'm probably out on the Sharks.
Yeah, I'm not going to go at length on San Jose here. I have no interest in playing them here tonight. I say that, and our old friends here in Nashville, one's carrying a 960 save percentage at 5-on-5 since the All-Star break. Like, that is going to fall through the floor eventually. It would be hilarious if it happened against San Jose. Yeah, could you imagine? But I have no interest in the Sharks. I had some interest in that Novak Evangelista line when it looked like Evangelista was going to be on the top power play unit, but they moved him off for Tyson Barrie. Now, there's not a big sample with Tyson Barrie and Yossi on the top power play. It's only like 60 minutes, which honestly isn't a lot. It's about a quarter of the season, and a quarter of the season of a power play unit isn't a ton to go off of. They have been about as successful as they have been using a fourth forward, which I think kind of makes sense when you look at like the odds. Like, they've tried Tommy Novak and he's a pretty good player, but when you look at like Tyson Barrie's offensive skills and like Colton Sissons or Luke Evangelista, like, I don't think he's that far off. You know what I mean?
Jason Zucker, please.
No. What? No. What's wrong with you? I'm muting you. Anyways, what? It's Nashville 1 that I'm interested here. The interesting thing about Nashville is, like, they're the only line in that price range that's really carrying any ownership, right? I mean, we'll get to Vegas a little bit later, but in that 18 to like 20K price range, it's basically Nashville 1 and then a bunch of like 1% or under lines. So if you want to play, if you're playing a line in that price range, you have to basically make a decision. Do I want to play Nashville 1 or do I want to play literally anybody else? Like, that's just kind of the decision you come to. Nashville 1, obviously 2.9 expected goals for since the All-Star break. Philip Forsberg, he has 90 shots in his last 20 games. Like, that's more than Pasternak. Like, he's been absolutely incredible for a while. I mean, basically the only season he's probably going to hit 40 goals and 40 assists again here this season. He's been incredible all season. It's a great matchup for Nashville. They are rating highly for me, obviously, by top 2 stacks. They're rated highly as well. Technically 5th, depending on what New Jersey does with their top line. They could be the 4th highest top 2 stack here tonight. I am a big proponent of Nashville 1. It is Tuesday, and we know what Philip Forsberg does on those Tuesdays. I really do like the Nashville top line here.
Yeah, I do too. The only reason I said Jason Zucker was because they haven't tried him yet.
Okay, fair enough, but like, no. Okay? No.
It can't be any worse than Tyson Barrie. I mean, maybe it could.
I think it can.
Tyson Barrie, man. Anyway, Colorado Avalanche with a 3.7 total. Heading into St. Louis, the Blues have a 2.7. The Blues drive me nuts. Enough to voice crack me. My internet isn't even that great either, but like, they're going Thomas, Kyrou, Shen, Buchnevich, Neighbors, Saad, and they mixed up their power play unit. So, like, Kyrou's on the second unit, Thomas and Shen are on the top unit. The Blues are borderline unplayable here tonight, despite like Colorado not being that great defensively or on the penalty kill, and they take a bunch of penalties. You know what I mean? Like, I don't particularly love the Blues here. If anything, it would be that top line, but like, they're not fully correlated. Taking Kyrou off the top power play unit is baffling to me. So I'm probably not going to be playing the Blues. Now, the interesting thing here is what to do with Colorado, because Colorado 1 is $25,500. That's very expensive. They have a 29.6% top 2 stack on a 13-game slate. That is bona fide ridiculous. And only 5.5% projected ownership because of the price. They're fully correlated. The Blues don't take a ton of penalties. So I think that's one reason not to play them. But again, like McKinnon, Rantanen, and Shushkin may all play 22 plus minutes. I don't particularly love the Blues lines here defensively at all. They could run them over. I think the more interesting line in this game, like obviously you can play Colorado 1. It's like if you love them, you play them. The more interesting line for Colorado to me is Colorado 2. Middlestat, Lehkonen, and Drouin coming in at 1%, 12-5. I think that line is very playable here tonight. And there's no matchup coming back to me from the Blues that worries me. Again, they don't take a ton of penalties, so this is a pretty good 5-on-5 matchup. I as much as I love Colorado 1 here tonight, they're priced out of what I want to do. Colorado 2 firmly in play for me. Blues, I don't particularly love them at all.
It's interesting. I was looking at the games that these two teams have played this season. St. Louis has lost 2 of the 3 games, and they've only scored 1 goal in those 2 losses, 1 goal in each game, and then they beat Colorado 8-2. It doesn't mean anything for tonight. It's just something I found funny. I don't have a lot of. St. Louis is kind of like doing what the Islanders are doing, which is, but kind of like almost in reverse direction, because St. Louis has actually been winning a bunch of games lately. I think it was 4 in a row that they won, where the Islanders have lost 4, and even despite that, they are still swapping everything around. I get why they're doing it with the power play, because they made that change on the power play and then they scored 3 power play goals. But I wonder if Drew Bannister realized he was playing the Anaheim Ducks and not a real NHL team. Like, we'll see how that goes here tonight. I don't have a lot of interest in St. Louis. Like, the thing is with the Blues, that 16,100 for that Robert Thomas line. So we're looking at that 14 to 16K range again that we were talking about. And honestly, I'd rather just go play Columbus. Like, that's just kind of the way that I feel about this. I'd rather play Columbus on the road against a terrible, what I think is a terrible 5-on-5 Detroit team, than play Colorado, which is a legit cup contender. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't feel like the smart play, especially where Columbus isn't coming in with much ownership. I mean, the Los Angeles lines aren't coming in with a ton of ownership. They're coming in over-owned, but not a ton. And then we're getting to like Carolina 2 that we talked about. Like, there are other lines that I'd rather play in that price range. And then I'm not dipping down to the second line. So I'm always fine with one-offs from St. Louis, especially with what they've done to these lines. Like, I'm perfectly fine with a one-off Pavel Buchnevich. I'm perfectly fine with a one-off Jake Neighbors. I'm perfectly fine. That's about it. Actually, Braden Shen at 3,900. Well, Braden Shen, considering he's top line, top power play now at 3,900, is not a bad, like, cheap one-off, right? But I don't have a lot of interest in stacking them. It's a question of what to do with Colorado. Man, that's expensive. And I feel like I've said that at least twice, and Colorado just completely annihilated one slate where I've said that. I actually
like 117 DK points, I think.
Yeah, they had 11 combined points or something like that. And so things didn't go that well that night. That top line's been really good with Nichushkin there. Obviously, 3.2 expected goals, 3.8 actual goals per 60. Nichushkin, 5 points in 4 games since returning from injury. The thing is like, I think there are expensive lines that I'd rather play that are actually cheaper. Like, we'll get to Edmonton and Tampa Bay a little bit later. Like, I think I'd rather play those lines here tonight than play a 25K plus Colorado team. It's on the road. That's not necessarily a great power play matchup. McKinnon one-off obviously is perfectly fine. I wrote up Casey Middlestat in the picks article because he's still getting 18 or 19 minutes, and he's going to get some soft matchups against the middle 6 from the Blues. But other than some one-offs, I don't have a lot of interest in stacking this game.
Yeah, St. Louis doesn't take a bunch of penalties, and when they do, they have trouble, killing them. And Colorado's power play can run anybody over. But like 3.7 road total, when you have Edmonton with a 4.1 home total coming up next, you know what I mean? And there's some other, expensive lines that we like as well. Again, like, they would need at least 80 DK points, which is very in the realm of possible for them. So if you love them, you play them. Just simple facts. Montreal Canadiens with a 2.4 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 4.1. Edmonton won $1,700 cheaper, coming in with a little bit less ownership, 21% top two stack, fully correlated. Montreal takes a nitrous amount of penalties. It's a good spot. I think I prefer Edmonton 1 to Colorado 1 just from the price savings. And I know the ownership is lower, but I think McDavid will be the highest owned compared to him and McKinnon. So like one-offing, I guess is fine, but like I think I'd rather just full stack because I think, I don't think a lot of people will take Ryan Nugent-Hopkins along for the ride. So I think I would prefer just full Edmonton 1 to full Colorado 1. Edmonton 2 is interesting because Draisaitl and Foegele have very good numbers together, and they're going to get middle six matchups of Montreal. And as good as, there's not much good. Like their expected goal, like Montreal's expected goals offensively have been pretty good since January 1st, but like defensively, they've just been absolute poopers. So like, I don't mind Leon Draisaitl, Foegele, McLeod at 15-3. But like, I think I'd be hard pressed not to play Edmonton without McDavid, and Edmonton 1 would be easily my favorite line in this game. Montreal 1, a bit interesting, 1.1% projected at 17-4. It's just like if they happen to get into your crunches, I think that's fine. They're a fully correlated line. Edmonton has been very good defensively. They have a pretty good penalty kill, so I'm not going to go out of my way to play Montreal 1. If they happen to get in, I think that's fine. Newhook, Roy, Armia, I think one or two of those guys, if you want to pluck them for like a power play stack for another team, they're a cheap two-man, I think is okay, just because Draisaitl, Foegele, McLeod, not great defensively, but really this is an Edmonton 1 game.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in Montreal here. Like, I think I agree with, like, if you crunch, 50 lineups and you get Montreal in 1 or 2 or something like that, I think it's fine, especially with the price drop, right? Like, this is a line that had been living in the 18K range for a while. I think they even got to 19K at one point. So they're down to 17,400. I think it's a lot more palatable. Also, it's Calvin Pickard starting. It's not Stuart Skinner. Not like it makes like a chasm of a difference here. I do think, if I was Montreal, I'd rather face Pickard than face Skinner. So that's just kind of the way that I look at it. This isn't an Edmonton 1 game for me. I'd rather play Edmonton than Colorado. I agree with you there. I wrote up Edmonton in the picks article. They've been unreal. Over 400 minutes together, 4.5 expected goals per 65, actual goals per 60. Also note, with McDavid as his center, Nugent-Hopkins points per 60 minutes is 2.6. Without McDavid, it's 1.2. So, like, not only does he have that perfect correlation with him, but it makes him an actually good 5-on-5 producer. Like, Edmonton 2 is fine, but I think this is kind of like the Carolina situation where Montreal's takes so many penalties and the penalty kill has generally been so bad that I want as many guys on the Edmonton top power play as possible. So, like, whereas in Carolina, like, they have the perfectly correlated top line, you get the perfectly correlated top line here for Edmonton. I really do like Edmonton 1. They're my favorite line on the board here tonight, even including Colorado, which is coming in with a higher top 2 stack percentage, but they're number 1 on my personal board. I think they'd probably be like top 3 on anybody's board here tonight. So I really do like full stacking Edmonton here. If you want to just one off McDavid, I think that's fine, but this is such a good power play matchup. It's one of those situations where even if they only get 2 power plays, they can easily go 2 for 2. You know what I mean? So I really do like Edmonton 1 here. Probably the only stack that I have a lot of interest in single entry. Everything else would probably be more MME for me.
Yeah, agreed. Minnesota Wild with a 3.5 total heading into Anaheim. The Ducks have a 2.5 total. I just went and looked for Ducks lines. We didn't get them. They did say Mason McTavish will be back tonight, but Trevor Zegras will not. I don't know what the lines are going to be because of that, because currently in top stacks, we have Terry, Carlson, Killorn, Vetrano, Strome, Leeson. Maybe it will be Terry, Carlson, Killorn, and then Vetrano, McTavish, Strome. I mean, your guess could be as good as mine. Like, they try to play Carlson with Killorn a bunch, so like it could be fairly accurate. It's not super important, but again, like Minnesota's penalty kill is not great, but like I don't know if I'm going to be running out to play the Ducks here tonight. The interesting thing is what to do with Minnesota, because the highest owned line on the night is Minnesota 1 at 21.8, Kaprizov, Boldy, Hartman. And I don't know. Like, I'd much rather play Edmonton. Like, I know this is a really, really good power play spot, and they're fully correlated. Hartman being up there concerns me. They're just not very good 5-on-5. And I get it. It's a great power play matchup. But you know who's also in a great power play matchup? Connor McDavid. And they're in a very good 5-on-5 spot too. So for the extra 2,000 at half the ownership, I'd much rather play Edmonton. I think Minnesota 1 is fine. Like, anything with Kaprizov is fine. Like, that dude's been on an all-world heater since the beginning of the season. I just, in my one lineup here tonight, am I gonna play Minnesota 1? I don't think so. In MME, like, easily I'd play them. It's just a question of whether I want to come under the field or over the field. I wouldn't really want to match the field. Minnesota 2 is a bit interesting. They're coming in 5x their top 2 stack, though, which does concern me. I do like Rossi and Zuccarello, but again, this is a very, very good power play spot. So I want to get as much power play guys in as possible, and that would be the top line. So I think I prefer the top line. It's just the ownership on this slate worries me. On the Duck side, maybe like a one-off Terry or one-off McTavish, but like I'm not running out to play the Ducks here.
Yeah, I have no interest in Anaheim. I honestly don't even care what the lines are. It just doesn't matter to me. Like, Minnesota's been a really good 5-on-5 team. There are 26 teams on the slate tonight. I'm not stacking the Ducks because they're in a decent power play matchup. Like, you know what I mean? Right. And there are just other lines in that 14 to 16K price range that I would rather play. Like, go play Toronto, go play Carolina, go play, New Jersey. The Minnesota second line in this game, I'd rather play. Like, that's just kind of the way I look at it. Question is whether you want to play Minnesota or not. Like, they aren't as good at 5-on-5 without Hartman, but this is it's the best power play matchup on the slate here tonight. Like, that's the problem. Anaheim at 4.9 minor penalties per game since the All-Star break. That leads the league. And Minnesota's at 4 minor penalties drawn per game since the All-Star break. That's like third in the league. Minnesota could get a ton of power plays here tonight, and it's a perfectly correlated line. I really do like Minnesota 1. It's just I'd rather pay an extra $1,500 or whatever and go play Edmonton instead. Like, Leo Carlson being back does change things a little bit at 5-on-5. Like, he has been, I wouldn't say by far their best defensive forward, because Jack Silverberg's been pretty good, but he's at least been top 3. And there's not a lot of guys that I would even put in anywhere as close to their status. So Radko Gudas still being out for Anaheim also hurts them all over the place. Minnesota 1 is fine. I think Minnesota 2 is honestly still in play, even at 6% or 7% or whatever, just because with no Gudas and McTavish back, the middle of that lineup is going to be just a dumpster fire defensively. I think they're fine if you want to put them in with like a Tampa Bay or something like that. But for me, this game is all about the power play matchup for Minnesota. So it's all about Minnesota 1. And it's all about deciding whether you want to play them or, go play Edmonton, pay up a lot more and go play Colorado, like those types of things. This is a min 1 or bust game.
Yeah, and like 10% ownership isn't that egregious, because we talked about like 9.7% ownership lines that we like. It's just like, I'd rather just play Connor McDavid. You know what I mean? It's just like, I like Ryan Hartman. It's just I kind of like that Connor McDavid slapdick a little bit more. Chicago Blackhawks with a 2 total. I think they're being generous. The Los Angeles Kings have a 3.6 total. I'll be brief on the Hawks. No, thank you. One off Bedard if you happen to do it in 150 and happens to sneak in, sure. But like, no, thank you. This is an LA game for sure for me. LA2, Fiala, Moore, Deneau. My preferred line at 16-2, coming in at 9.4% projected ownership. I think, honestly, that's fine in this matchup. You like Kempe, Kopitar, Byfield better, you can play them. They're at 8.2% projected ownership. $200 cheaper, but I prefer Fiala, Moore, Deneau. You want to go to the third line, they're getting 6.5% ownership at 9,300. Dubois, Laferriere, Lizotte. Like, I don't particularly love that. You see Victor Arvidsson on LA4, but we'll see what happens there. It's LA2 game for me, and it's not really particularly close, but I do like LA1 as well.
Yeah, nothing on Chicago for me. I didn't even research anything for Chicago. I just crossed them out completely. There's no reason if you're 150 maxing and you happen to get to them, good luck. I have no interest in playing them. I wrote up Fiala in the picks article today, so I'm definitely on Los Angeles too. The reason I wrote up Fiala was Los Angeles, at least before their recent road trip here, had been using the Fiala, Deneau, Moore line a lot more at home in shutdown matchups. They had stopped using Anze Kopitar in the shutdown matchups because the top line was really, really struggling, especially with Kempe hurt. Now with Kempe back, maybe they changed things. I don't know. And that's obviously important for this Chicago matchup. You and I talk about it all the time. That Jason Dickinson line stays very good defensively. And this isn't a particularly good power play matchup for Los Angeles. The only team taking fewer minor penalties per game since the All-Star break than Chicago is Vegas. Chicago's not taking any penalties, and their goaltending and their PK has generally been very good, or at least solid. So I'm not really stacking Los Angeles for the power play correlation here tonight. It's not like Carolina or Minnesota or anything like that. I'm stacking Los Angeles for the 5-on-5 and even strength matchups. And Fiala's line going out against Connor Bedard heavily favors the Los Angeles side. In the picks article, I mentioned how good that Los Angeles second line has been this season. More importantly is Connor Bedard. With Connor Bedard on the ice, 3.4 expected goals against per 60, 4.2 actual goals against per 60 at 5-on-5. And that's on the season. The numbers have been worse since he's returned from injury. And the Los Angeles second line, they've had some very big games over the last few weeks. They're a line that you and I played a lot over the last 2 years. They haven't had high goal scoring rates, but 3.1 expected goals per 60 since the All-Star break is pretty high. And Fiala's been shooting a lot. Last 20 games, 10 goals, 3.2 shots per game. He's been really good. That line has been really good. I think they're going to still get that Bedard matchup, which is a great, going up against Connor Bedard and Tyler Johnson is something that really, really favors Los Angeles. They're easily the highest rated line I have in that 16K-ish price range, coming in with a little bit of negative leverage per the top stacks tool, 9.4%, 5.3% top two stack. I think it's just fine. I really like Los Angeles too here tonight.
I wonder, the Kings just hate Pierre-Luc Dubois. I wonder if they just send that line out against Dickinson. Be go enjoy. Buffalo Sabres with a 2.6 total heading into Vancouver. The Canucks have a 3.5. Buffalo's on a back-to-back. They played last night, I believe. Yeah, I fell asleep so early, I don't even remember. The interesting thing here, I don't have a ton of interest in Buffalo here tonight. Back-to-back on the road, 13-game slate against a team contending for the President's Cup. I'll pass. Vancouver has changed up their lines. They're going Pettersson, Garland, Hoglander, Miller, Besser, Suter. Those are nice. They're much better than they were because when Mikheyev was on the line with Besser and Miller, they literally were playing at a snail's pace. Suter, Miller and Besser have had their best numbers this season with Suter. They're going to see Thompson tuck gurgle shits, but whatever. They're coming in at 1.1% projected ownership at 17-2. No one ever plays this line. So I like them at 1.1%. And Buffalo struggled on the penalty kill, and Miller and Besser have been absolute animals on the power play this season. You want to play Pettersson, Garland, Hoglander? I think that's an interesting combo, and I think it will end up being a good line, and they're going to see middle six matchups of the Sabres. They're still pretty good, you know what I mean? Like, the Sabres are a good 5-on-5 team, but the thing is, like, their penalty kill, just not great. And Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen went last night, so their goalies without him haven't been as good. So, like, I don't mind the Vancouver top six here. Am I going to play them in single entry? I don't think so. But at that ownership, I will give some thought to it.
On the Buffalo side, like, I'm not going to go long here. Cousins, Peterka, Benson do have pretty good numbers together this year, and they're not going to go up against the JT Miller line, which has been by far the best defensive line that Vancouver has. And Peterka, Benson, and Cousins, 190 minutes together, 3.1 expected goals per 60. They haven't scored a lot because they're shooting 3%, like 3% as a line. It's unsustainably low. They can break out, and it is Casey DeSmith in net. It's not Thatcher Demko, right? So I'm not targeting them as a filler here tonight. I think if I was playing 150 lineups, I would keep that Cousins line in mind for Buffalo, but this is about the JT Miller line for me. You're right about their numbers with Suter. 3.4 expected goals for, 1.4 against per 60 minutes in nearly 155 minutes together, 5.5 actual goals for, and they're all in the top power play unit last game. It's a perfectly correlated line. So I do have interest in that Vancouver line. They're not coming in with all that much ownership, as you mentioned, 1.1%, only a 2.4% top two stack. But this is a high total. It's a 3.5 total. Like, it's just below the Los Angeles team that we just talked about, that we said we were really high on the second line. Miller, Besser, and Suter have been really good this year. They're not going to have to face Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, which is, I think, is really important for this game, as you mentioned. So that Miller, Besser, Suter line, I think, is one of those mid-price lines that I would kind of gravitate towards if I was looking for a couple mid-price lines to stack here tonight. And I also just, like I said, I want to mention that Cousins line. I think they're fine as a filler, especially if you're playing, 50, 150 lineups or something like that here tonight.
Yeah, agreed. I'm a big Zach Benson slappy, but, not tonight. Tampa Bay Lightning with a 3 total heading into Vegas. The Golden Knights have a 3.4 total. Pietrangelo is out sick tonight. Dorofeyev has a minor injury, so Paul Cotter back into the lineup.
Yeah, welcome back, Cotter.
I was going to make that joke. I couldn't figure it out. I would have made a fool of myself, but that's another day that ends in Y. I like Vegas 1 here on the Vegas side.
One more quick lineup note. While we were on the show, Tampa Bay was doing power play practice, and they did have Duclair on the top power play unit with Kucherov, Point, and Stamkos.
Mr. Cooper, you piqued my interest. On the Vegas side, I do like Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, 5% projected ownership, 6.7% top two. They're fine. Like, let's not pretend that Tampa's good defensively. I've been saying it all season. Broken record. I feel like, I'll say they're not good defensively, and then you'll just trash Vasilevsky, and we'll move on. That's just kind of how we do Tampa. I do like Vegas 1 here. With Dorofeyev out, I guess, like, Cotter coming in is fine. Like, I kind of had interest in Carlson, Dorofeyev, Amadio as a filler. Cotter there, I guess it's fine. Maybe Mantha moves up. I don't know. I couldn't find lines. So we'll have to wait and see. And I don't really want to wait and see until 10:30 to figure out if I'm going to play Vegas 3 on a 13-game slate. You know what I mean? On the Tampa side, I like Tampa 1. They're fully correlated now. There's no ownership. Pietrangelo out is a big loss. Now Nick Hague moves into that second pairing with Hanifin. I like Nick Hague. He's not Alex Pietrangelo. Vegas's penalty kill this season hasn't been very good. 0.5% ownership on Tampa 1. I don't know, man. Like, I'm interested in Tampa 1 here, even in single entry. Cirelli, Stamkos, Hagel. Can we give up that experiment? Like, can we just stop? Like, they haven't had over 1.8 expected goals, Cirelli and Stamkos together, since ever. So, like, can we do something about that? Like, just stop. Vegas won, Tampa won. Go about my day.
Yeah, for me, I'm more interested in the Tampa side, honestly, now that they're perfectly correlated on the power play. Like, as I said, when we were talking about Chicago, Vegas doesn't take penalties. They're at 2.1 minor penalties taken per game since the All-Star break. It is the lowest in the league. Like, league average, like 3.5, like, and they're at 2.1. So, like, they don't take any penalties. So it's not a great power play matchup per se in that respect for Tampa. But this is still a perfectly correlated top line with Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov at only 20,600. The problem is like, if you're going to play an expensive line tonight, like, other than Minnesota, there's not a lot coming in with, I guess, Nashville. Minnesota and Nashville is coming in with ownership, but there's nothing on the Rangers. There's nothing on Carolina. There's not much on Edmonton. Whatever New Jersey lines are not going to be high owned because they might be new combinations of warm up. Like, there are just a lot of expensive lines not coming in with much ownership. So, like, I don't feel the need to play a 0.5% Tampa line on the road in single entry. That's just kind of what I'm getting at. I think I would still would still rather play Edmonton, but Duclair being on the top power play unit does change things quite a bit. And if this were like a 7 or an 8 game slate, I think I'd have a lot more interest. I just think, especially with Edmonton at home, and Minnesota in the best power play matchup on the slate, like, there are just other expensive lines I'd rather play. But yeah, Tampa 1 is, if you're playing 20 max, 150 max, this is a line that you absolutely should be considering. It's not often you're going to get Tampa 1 at 0.5% at 20,600 on DK and perfectly correlated.
Yeah. That's going to go up quick if they have some good games. You know what I mean? So, and I'm sure John Cooper will break it up for no reason, but, whatever. Coming up after us, the NBA Deeper Dive with Josh and DK DFS. 6 o'clock, NBA Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg, and the 71st day in a row of me introducing Eric Lindquist as the former Iowa State caddy until he realizes it. 7 p.m., the Playback Live stream watch-along. That's a fun show. They watch games, talk, late swap, late news, this and that. So if you're playing NBA DFS, stick around for that. Let's talk about some defensemen. There is 26 teams playing, so there are going to be a lot of defensemen playing. Let's talk about them. Cale Makar, top of the board with Yossi, Dobson, Bouchard, Hughes, Werenski. Yossi, top of the board for me. Then probably Bouchard, Werenski. I think Makar is fine. Don't get me wrong. It's just not the best power play spot. There are going to be a lot in the mid-range and cheap guys. Cliffy will go through that for you. Who do you like?
Yeah, Yossi's number 1. Werenski comes in at number 2, which always scares me when I have a Columbus Blue Jackets player number 2 on my board at his position on a 26 team slate. So, and then Makar and then Bouchard. Like, I think it's just a great matchup for Yossi. I'm going to carry ownership, but I don't really care about that on a slate this big. Mid-price range, I wrote up Brock Faber just because it is such a good power play matchup for Minnesota. Like, he's going to play 24, 25 minutes. Charlie McAvoy, not in a bad spot against Ottawa. Ottawa's penalty kill really hasn't been that great. Devin Taves, because I think it is, that Colorado game is a lot more about the 5-on-5 matchup than it is about the power play. Our buddy Yam Cork running the top power play for Philadelphia, getting ice time, blocking shots. Chris Letang, like, New Jersey's not that good, man. He still grades reasonably highly for me, even though he's not getting a ton of power play time. I wrote up Simon Nemec in my picks article. He's been, I think it's over 21 minutes per game for 5 straight games now, and he has like 17 blocks in that span. I think he makes a good play on DK. Alex Carrier from Nashville, good matchup. He's had strong numbers. Eric Branson from Columbus, I guess. I mean, he grades well. What do you want me to do? Vladislav Gavrikov again from Los Angeles, especially where they're almost assuredly going 12-6 and not 11-7. Feel late to the Dmitry Orlov train because I didn't play on Sunday, but Dmitry Orlov 2,900 for Carolina I think is perfectly fine as well. Nick DeSimone was mentioned in chat, and he is popping in projections. I'll also mention that in the 3 games with New Jersey, he does have that 25-minute game, and then he played 16 minutes and 11 and a half minutes. So, like, just be careful on assuming he's going to be like a 22-minute guy here tonight.
Yeah, 3 names that I wrote down that were not mentioned. I would be remiss if I didn't mention my boy Artem Zub at 3,800. He's going to play easily 21 minutes. Noah Hannafin with Pietrangelo out at 4,800. And Moritz Seider at 5,300 running the power play for Detroit that will never win a faceoff and probably have to enter the zone unsuccessfully. But Phil, yeah, he did mention Cam York. He called him Yam Cork. He does like the Cam York. Let's talk about some goalies here. If I'm spending up, it's probably for Linus Ullmark or Gustafsson. If you want to pay all the way up for Saros, I think that's fine in cash. Like it's fine for cash games. It's a winnable game. Get into the mid-price range here. Sorokin at 7,400 is a fairly obvious play. I do like Hellebuck at 7,300. Rangers shoot a lot. They don't score a lot sometimes. Like for the cheap guys, like I don't know. Like Krona is under 7K. Anytime he's under 7K, like you can consider it. Like Montembeault at 7K is like really scary. He's gonna like he like I don't think I'm gonna go there. Like I'm trying to find like a cheap option. It's just like I don't think it would be anyone down at the bottom range. Like maybe I'll take a stab at Gibson, but like I don't really want to go below Hellebuck at 7,300.
Yeah, I think the one guy would be Krona, I think, just because I'm not as concerned about Nashville's offense as I would be about Edmonton's.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cheapest that I feel comfortable going down is 7,300. I wrote up Connor Hellebuck. Jets just not taking a ton of penalties. Rangers not really drawing a ton of power plays. A lot of 5-on-5 shots for Hellebuck. That's good for him. Like if you want to play Igor on the other side, absolutely fine with that. I think both goalies are definitely in play there, especially with that 5.5 total. Wrote up Sorokin for 7,400. Some reason people think like Sorokin's having like this god awful season. Like there's been numerous articles I've seen over the last few days about Sorokin's play, and I'm like, has anybody actually watched this New York Islanders penalty kill? Like they've been worse than Montreal for a lot of the season, and I've watched a lot of Montreal games and had to change the channel when they kill penalties. It's that bad. Like this Islanders PK sucks, and hanging that on Sorokin is hilarious. I hope he gets pissed and demands a trade or something. Then they're stuck with going to get Vitek Vanacek for a starter next year or something. Anyways, don't mind Jake Allen either. He's more expensive at 7,900, but like Pittsburgh, they do have trouble scoring. Also don't mind Linus Ullmark at 8,300. I think he's the expensive goalie I would go to, but honestly, it's crazy to say I think I prefer Jake Allen over Ullmark here tonight.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mentioned Alex said in chat Tarasov. Tarasov is I think a good play here at 7,200. He's been pretty good. I'm not as worried about Detroit scoring without Dylan Larkin, but at that price, I'd probably just rather pay the extra $100 in Hellebuck. But yeah, I agree. Tarasov's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I can stomach Tarasov. Yeah. I like how the Leafs are just pumping Samsonov out there when Wool's healthy, but whatever. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Actually just talked about the team quite a bit, and assuming that he's going to be back on what was a super successful top line, I think he's going to break his goal slump in a big way here tonight. I'm going with Jesper Bratt.
Interesting. I was on that line too for my hat trick pick. I have a reserve pick, and I'm going Brock Besser.
Oh, I like it. Nux night.
We like a good Nux night. But yeah, we will be back on Thursday. Tomorrow there's 1.5 games, I think. So thanks, Bettman. But yeah, we'll be back on Thursday. Good luck, everybody. If you're looking to go premium, click the link in the chat, get into the Discord, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Good luck tonight, everybody.